What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Vlogmas day 5, I believe. I'm here with my brother-in-law slash really good friend slash competitor, Ricky Wysocki, and I got a special treat for you today. What we're going to be going over is a couple unique things that Ricky does with his putt. We're talking about one of the greatest putters of all time. So I think I'm going to ask 3 questions of a couple, like I said, unique things that he does. He's going to explain why he does those things, and hopefully that'll help you in your stroke.
Let's do it.
Okay, so one thing I definitely have to ask is, how do you control your putt when it's so nose down and it comes out so fast and high sometimes? Like, for most people, if they get that nose, angle wrong and they putt it that hard, it's going to either float forever, or it's just gonna dive into the ground. How did you come up with that unique way of perfect height, slam it right down there and their nose down?
Yeah, I think whenever I'm putting my best, I always have the kind of rainbow. Like if you see a basketball shot, like Steph Curry has like a perfect arc. For me, like when I'm putting my best, it has a little bit of, like you said, high, and then it gets to an apex and then it comes down. And it all depends on how much spin I'm putting and the leverage I use with my bottom of my fingers. Also pressure up with the thumb and using the thumb to spin it. So, and then that part paired with kind of how I move my arm swing, and I have a little bit unique arm swing where I come a little bit lower and come a little bit higher, so that kind of creates the high to low arcing rainbow putt, I guess you would say.
Yeah, let's give them a little demonstration of what I'm talking about.
Okay, so obviously for my baskets, I like to put them upside down. Actually, that's another thing that I do on purpose. So this catching zone is actually smaller, as you can see. The high to low catching zone is a lot smaller, probably, I don't know, maybe 6 inches on top, 6 inches on the bottom. And I do that on purpose, just so that way I can dial in my sweet spot. And then when I go on tour with the regular baskets, they seem a little bigger. So for me, I don't have much wind here, so I'm just gonna kind of just putt a couple. Obviously I'm trying to make it, but I'm also trying to get some feel. So just kind of trying to get that nice smooth pop. And as you can see, that one was more of a line drive. This one's gonna be a rainbow kind of arc. So I kind of started it high and less speed and kind of died it in.
Perfect. Let's stop right there. So first one, kind of a line drive like you said. So more of your traditional flat putt that, let's say beginner starts out. They're thinking, okay, the easiest from point A to point B is make sure that nose angle is good, hit it hard, and at least I'm going to have the height right.
Yep.
But you're able to change the nose angle, which is what I think is very unique about your putt. And then how are you able to aim exactly how high to get it? Because let's say, like on that last putt you're saying? On that last putt, I mean, that thing was right here and then dove down. What makes you switch in between the line drive and that one?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that for me, it's wind. So like right now we don't have much wind, so I can kind of play with the apex of the putt. And sometimes obviously I miss high or low, but if it's windy, I'm gonna do more of the line drive, and I can control that with how I move my arm swing. So like if I move my arm swing more of like what I want the disc to do, like a line drive, versus if I want it to come, I'm going to come lower if I want to do the arcing high to low. So a lot of it's arm swing, and a lot of it's how I come back to my chest, and also how I spin the disc as well.
So let's stop there for 1 second. So when you're doing your swing, a lot of, I think, amateurs think like this. They don't really think about the wrist, and if it's flat, they're obviously going to try to keep their wrist completely flat through, which is smart. How do you get it to get the nose down, and are you thinking about that during your stroke, or does the wrist stay the same and the arm just moves in different spots?
So yeah, I think that for me, a lot of my leverage comes from my bottom fingers here. So I'm able to kind of push up. It's almost like I'm pushing up, but yet still going forward. So I'm not just doing a straight spin. If I just and I can do that, but more, I just feel comfortable doing that because I've done it for so long. That I'm getting the leverage from these 3 fingers.
Show them
So the 3 fingers, what it's doing is I'm coming down. My putter is facing the ground, like the nose angle here, and then I know, hey, if I pop my fingers and spin my thumb like that, I'm able to kind of come up and forward. So it's not just, if I just went up, my disc would just go straight up in the air, right, like that. If I'm throwing like a pizza up or something. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is I partner that with the up motion to flinging my wrist forward like what everyone else does. So I just add that little extra variable of, obviously, if you're not used to it, it can be inconsistent, but I'm so used to it and dialed with it that I can go up with the leverage of my fingers, pushing up on the disc, and then combining that with the fling of the forward motion. So it's up and forward, so it's boom, and that's what kind of gives it the arcing motion, is these bottom fingers. I think that's the biggest difference between me and a regular spin putt or just normal putt.
Okay, so then how do you pick your apex? And then how do you pair that with like your touch? Is that something that they can learn by doing an actual skill, or is it something that you just have to practice over a long period of time?
Yeah, I think it all depends on how much you spin. I mean, that's really all it is. Like, if I'm going to putt at a higher apex, I'm going to put less spin on it because I know it's going to obviously gravity. If you have less spin, the gravity is going to want to fall quicker. So, but if I put more spin, it's going to have. I'm going to aim a little bit lower because I know it's going to be more of like a straight line trajectory. Yeah. So I can control the speed and the height, also the distance control just based on the spin. I'm not necessarily changing my aiming point. Like, oh, I'm going to aim above the basket. It's like most of my putts are the same, and I'm just changing the spin. If I want to go further, I'm going to spin it a little bit farther. 30 feet, I'm going to spin a certain way, and then I'm going to add maybe 10 or 20% to a 40-footer. And obviously I do deviate a little bit up and down, but it's just a feel thing. It's just a feel like, hey, I know I can look and see how far I am. I'm not like, hey, I'm going to aim at this chain. It's like, no, I'm going to put this amount of pop on top of the basket, and I know by the time, you know, I'm just obviously making an educated guess based on my feel of how much I've practiced and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm more of a feel putter. I see the distance I want, and then I know how much to kind of pop my wrist and pair that with the arc that I want on it.
So what about when you get closer? Does the touch kind of go away and then we're just slamming them in there? Or do you still like kind of slow it down and take a little spin off and know that it's going to drop? Or is it more like, because I've seen you before in tournaments and they go in there pretty hard.
Yeah, it also depends on confidence. Like obviously as a professional player, sometimes you're confident, sometimes you're not. So that depends on the speed too. If I'm really comfortable with how I'm popping it, I might have a little bit more touch and soft it in there. But if I'm not confident, I'm gonna slam them in there because I don't want to rely on the deviation. Sometimes I have the arc perfect, sometimes I don't. Every day's a little bit different sometimes. So that's the little bit of you know, as a professional player, you got to gauge what kind of day you're having. Are you having, hey, I can touch it in there, or hey, I might have a spit out here or there, so I'm gonna have to jam them in there and deal with the results.
So last thing, your putt is pretty difficult to like replicate, right?
Yeah.
But we see a lot of amateurs trying to replicate it. You're one of the best to ever do it. So what would be one small tip right now to those people who, you know, try to mimic your style, maybe to keep them kind of on track with what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I think the biggest misnomer, and I actually learned a little bit from Yuli here, to be honest, when I was at his house for USTGC, but for me is the thumb motion. So obviously a lot of people talk about the bottom fingers because that's stabilizing, but you don't think about, like for me, I want to make sure this pointer finger, and it doesn't have to be like this, that's just how I do it, but it can be down, but just keeping that stability on the disc the entire way. If it starts coming off or falling off early, you're gonna have wobbles and not as clean a spin. So keeping that finger in a nice consistent keeping it in touch with the disc, not letting it come off. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is this thumb. Actually utilize that thumb to actually get spin. So like you can actually, and I know Yuli does this really well, is using this thumb to kind of actually get, like if you notice, I'm actually getting spin with this thumb. I'm not using the bottom fingers. So that creates leverage that you're pushing down. So it creates that pressure, but also creates that spin to where if you use your thumb right, you're using your bottom fingers and your top finger to get that extra spin. So those three things definitely, that's one thing I just recently learned. As a player, obviously you're always learning. And that thumb motion, that's key. And it takes a little bit of time, but once you learn how to do that, that helped me a lot, getting a lot more consistent spin.
Well, there you guys have it. I mean, if you didn't get something from that, I don't know what we're supposed to do on this channel. That's a lot of information and a nice little quick set of time. We want to thank you for coming to the channel, obviously.
Thanks for coming to my house.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place, I'm telling you. He's got a great piece of property here, and I always love visiting. But remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you
next time.
Oh, you've done this before.
See you down the road, and make sure to down the fairway.
Down
that's
the
right.
fairway.
That's right.
Okay.
That's funny.